Hello, Robin.
Hey, how are you?
Well, we took only about an hour to set up our recording studio. My lighting is a little too stark, but we couldn't really adjust it because there is such brightness outside. Everyone, you have to put up with me looking like a ghost a little bit. I hope that the editor is going to adjust it, but I'm glad to be here, and I have to remind myself when there's this frustration of preparing for recording and all that stuff that I'm doing it for you, and we're doing it too for our dogs to be better and healthier and living better lives. So that's why we are here. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. The sun is shining, the dogs are happy. We had a great morning walk today, so I'm excited.
We're talking puppies again?
Yeah, we're doing a part 2. Do we want to do a little recap of what we covered last time?
You know, if I could remember what we covered last time, we would do a recap, but maybe you can remember, remind me.
So last time we touched base on antibodies in particular and raising puppies and how it all starts from well before puppies are even born and how the mother passes things on, how we can titer test instead of vaccinating, making sure that puppies are getting their colostrum for good immunity, properly raising puppies as well in an environment that is enriching, and making sure that we are socializing before all vaccines are done.
I want to emphasize that I'm not against vaccination. Some people may be against vaccination. I'm not against vaccination. What I'm against is unnecessary procedures and unnecessary vaccination. You know, we kind of talked last time about the fact that the mother passes the antibodies before birth and also through the milk. Then the antibodies persist until about 12 to 18 or maybe even 20 weeks. And while the immune system is maturing, the puppies are protected. The problem is that when we vaccinate puppies too early at 6 or 8 weeks, the vaccine actually latches onto the antibodies and it neutralizes them. And puppies become effectively, based on the just principles of immunology, less protected. At 12 weeks, some puppies do get vaccinated and should get vaccinated if they have negative antibodies. But if they have positive antibodies, you can actually even extend it a little further. So what I do with my dogs, I measure the antibodies at the age of 8 weeks, then at the age of 12 weeks. And if I see them being positive, then I actually start socializing them with other dogs while they're protected, and I know that they're protected. You can also check at 16 weeks, so 12, 16, that's a month later, and see whether the antibodies persist. If they don't persist, then you vaccinate. The beauty of all this is that the antibodies persist even without boosting. And that's something that I've seen in practice, that I've done through titer testing, and I'm seeing that. The question remains whether we need to follow the status quo and continue with 3 different boosters and maybe increase the chances that the immune system will either overreact and we create some sort of vaccine-related side effect, or underreact and the antibodies will not be formed and created because it's hammered with all sorts of different antigens or vaccines. So this is my point. I'm not saying no vaccination. What I'm saying is wise vaccination and really adjust the protocols to what makes sense, common sense.
I completely agree. And I think it's, a worthy talk to have with your veterinarian as well, right? And ask a little bit more question and, not challenge it, but really have that conversation and saying, but why shouldn't we do this? Or why can't we do this? Or, even I would prefer to do this in any given situation.
It's a little more complicated because we've been educated by a system that basically acknowledges one protocol or just a few protocols. Mm-hmm. And if we really openly look at how we do things, we need to evolve and we need to actually upgrade and update our knowledge to really serve the purpose. And that's to keep our puppies and dogs protected. And I know that pretty much all veterinarians, with some exceptions, really care about the health of their dogs and cats and their patients. But I'd recommend taking it a little gently because I just think that righteousness either side is not really a good way to go. And having conversation is really good. So having conversation, looking up data, asking questions, and also choosing the vet that actually is the right vet for for us.
Yeah.
But over the years, you just kind of get really good sense of where you should be heading and what actually makes sense. And if you have the basic principles of medicine, if you understand them, then you start actually, if you have an open mind, you even start questioning the ways you were taught. And that's what we all are obligated to do, because the professors of 1800s were teaching different things than the professors of 1900s. And then the 20th century and 21st century, I think that the slight challenge in medicine, and maybe bigger than slight, is that we have relatively senior people teaching at these schools.
Mm.
And they're staying at the post until they're 65 or 70. And as we know, you don't teach an old dog a new trick very easily, even though I believe that you can. But it's not that easy. So I think that there's a little bit of a delay in how medicine or any science progresses. There's certain establishment running the field and, and educating the students and so on. And that's not going to change until those people basically retire or die. And then there's another step. You would not see the change being gradual, but it happens through jumps, right? And even about puppy diet or exercise or however we understand spaying and neutering, that changes not gradually, but it changes in steps. Or if you look at technology like electric cars, like if there wasn't one company, and that's Tesla, I think that we would still be driving the traditional cars, most of us, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we wouldn't have dog air conditioning for dogs. But anyway, I just want to say that medicine is complicated, and we need to be mindful, open-minded, and also understand that it's not easy to change our perception. And you have to have the right personality for that as well.
And I think you make a great point too in making sure that you and your vet are on the same page, and you know, of course, you're not going to see absolutely everything the same. That's just life. But making sure that you do have a good established relationship with your veterinarian, because you do need to work closely with them. Like, you can't be battling heads constantly. You need to have open communication for the best interest of your dog, truthfully.
I've seen some people actually being really against veterinarians, not understanding how difficult the job is and how difficult it is to actually handle not only the patients and treat them right, but also the clients and maybe their kids and the auntie and the husband.
Yeah.
I am a pacifist, and I believe that we all can get along without really trying to prove that the other person is wrong. And I really would like the canine community and the veterinary community
To work
come together a little more.
Yeah.
And learning to communicate and have a conversation and trusting a little more. And ideally, put the drug companies and the vaccine companies and the pet food companies on the periphery of this, because they should not be really affecting our relationship with our patients in any way, and vice versa. We know that there have been a lot of issues. So what do we do about it? Talk about it, have a civil conversation, and then see where it takes us.
Yeah, very true. So why don't we dive into a little bit of nutrition for puppies?
Where do I start? I will start with human nutrition, because in human medicine and human nutrition, it's commonly acknowledged fact that non-processed food is better for us humans. And I believe that that's the same in puppies and adult dog and senior dogs. So we need to actually really shift the paradigm from processed food that is preserved and sits on the shelf for 6 to 12 months, or maybe even longer, gets rancid, and the nutrients obviously don't last. Often vitamins and other nutrients degrade. So let's agree that processed food is not ideal. I understand that some people choose to feed it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. That's their choice. And, they're the guardians of their dogs. But if you want to have a healthy puppy, I think that we really need to adopt the same principles as with in human medicine and human babies, even though human babies, as we know, get fed formula and processed food as well. And, not artificial milk, but cow's milk as opposed to human milk. That's another story. But, going back to dogs and puppies, I really think that we need to start with natural food, whether it's raw or cooked. Some people are more comfortable with cooked. Some people are more comfortable with raw or a blend of that. I don't have a problem, an issue with that. And there are two amazing books by my dear colleagues, Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib. One of them is called The Forever Dog, and the other one is called The Forever Dog Life, that has amazing array of recipes and tips on how to feed dogs and puppies. I approach puppy nutrition in practice very simply. Dogs should ideally eat diet that is similar to what canines eat in nature. So two things happen there. Puppies basically get nursed by their mother, and then gradually they start nibbling and testing the other foods that, let's say, the mama wolf would bring in the den. And they just kind of start chewing and transitioning. And that happens, and you know that better than anyone, at what time?
Depending on the litter, about 3.5 weeks.
There we go. They open their eyes right at 2 weeks roughly, and then they start exploring and smelling a little more. Mm-hmm. Their senses become more acute, and they start testing. So, most people obviously get puppies 8 weeks and older. Mm-hmm. Again, I caution anyone from getting puppies from puppy mills, not only for ethical reasons, also for health reasons, nutritional reasons. If someone tells you that it's okay to adopt a puppy at 6 weeks, that's absolutely wrong. I almost feel like it would be better to actually extend it a little longer than 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. But, that's just the accepted formula and the economics of maybe breeding or whatever goes on there. It's super important to allow them to gradually transition from nursing to solid food. Yeah. We can have an open conversation because you're a very responsible and conscious breeder. I'm a vet, so we can have a conversation here. But I do think that just starting to offer basically, raw meat as soon as puppies are available, or if people aren't comfortable with that, going with cooked meat and some vegetables, obviously. There's many different vegetables that you can feed. There's some precautions that we should apply to raw meat, which is previously frozen, making sure that it's fresh. If you cook it, obviously that's a little easier, but there's no evidence that puppies should not be eating raw food. They eat raw food in nature. Their stomach acids are strong. I've never seen any issues with young dogs eating raw food. Mm. But once again, I understand that some people have been affected and influenced by the general perception of bacteria. They may want to feed cook. It's absolutely fine. We have recipe on our website or recipe maker on our website. People can just go and select the different meats and vegetables and also learn how much their dog should eat.
And I will note, for my puppies, like by 4 weeks, they are almost entirely eating raw. As soon as they start showing interest in mom's food and exploring a little bit more, yep. And mom's also like, not really interested in feeding you guys as much because you have sharp teeth, but they naturally they love chewing on bones. They do really well on, I start with like a ground turkey mixture. And then by the time that they go home at 9 weeks, they have probably about almost 10 proteins that they have had, just like my adult dogs, right? Mm-hmm. I am cautious in making sure that the calcium levels are appropriate and not too high, and same thing with fat levels. But they do so well right off the bat, right? There's no processed food that their poor little tummies, like if you think of a little puppy and they're going from mom's milk, which is super digestible, and then they go and they're weaned onto like a processed food that their body has to try and process. It never made sense to me, right? So weaning right onto raw, as I have always done with my own dogs, when I've gotten them as older puppies, it makes sense. And seeing the transformation and how well their guts do as they are older is incredible.
Well, when you look at, again, evolutionary biology, you see no animals actually eating different foods past weaning, no mammals. They basically eat the same food as their adult family. Yeah. And the same thing for seniors. You don't see any senior animals in nature eating different foods than the young generation and the middle-aged generation. Yeah. So that's one thing that we need to really keep in mind, that we came up with this idea that they should eat different different foods, but it doesn't happen in nature. So I naturally questioned that for many years, and then realized that really, like, dogs do well on the same adult food, or puppies do well on the same adult food when they're capable of eating it. Going back to bones, bones are not only a way for them to entertain themselves. They also massage the gums and the teeth. It's super important for development of permanent dentition. They kind of learn to be stronger. They had to work really hard. They work the bones and they hold them. And there's such wide range of benefits when it comes to offering bones and eating. And there is another persistent myth about bones. People worry that they splinter and they puncture the intestine, which doesn't happen. Like, if anyone who has seen a gut, you will actually try to pierce it with anything. It's very difficult. Now, the muscular layer as well of canines, whether it's the stomach or the intestine, is super strong, and it also is interactive. It actually reacts to anything that would kind of poke in. In 30 years, I have not had one single dog that would actually pierce their intestine with raw bones. Now, cooked bones are different. They become indigestible. They become very sharp. And that can cause either obstruction or even a puncture. The most serious problem that I see with not offering raw bones are dental issues.
Yeah.
Because nature intended bones to be chewed on, for puppies and dogs to become strong and entertain themselves, but also scrape the tartar and plaque from their teeth. And, I have not had a dog in my life, my own dog, that I would put under anesthesia for dental cleaning.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes it's necessary, but I've learned to be able to maintain my dog's teeth to the point where it was not necessary.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the variety of bones too, right? There's not just a one size fits all. You can do a huge variety of raw bones depending on the size of your dog, depending on the age of your dog. I know Pax absolutely adores your beef rib bones, right? Like he does so well on those. My guys love a really large, like elk or bison knuckle bone. It's probably about the size of their head, the ones that they love. It's huge. But there's so many different kinds too that you can do and get creative with.
This is actually a good point as well, to discuss the large bones versus small bones. You know how if you have a plumber or someone who is in a certain profession, they will see the potential dangers, right? Like, the plumber will tell you, don't throw this in the sink because it's going to clog your sink, or
Yep.
or the lifeguard in the pool will say, don't jump here because you can hurt your head, or be seriously injured. I, as a veterinarian, have seen the knuckle bones causing dental fractures.
Yes.
And I've seen so many of them that my general recommendation is not to give bones that are too strong, because strong dogs can actually crack their teeth, and not having teeth for dogs is actually a pretty serious problem.
Yeah.
I would not give my dog a knuckle bone.
I will note that, that's a very good point, because the reason why I find the ones that are literally the size of their head is because they can't bear down on any piece of that joint. So it's too big for them to gnaw down on it. And I only pick ones that are like that. I'm not picking any kind that are flat. They're nice and round. They have the ball joint in there. It's important that, they do not bear down. Same thing with marrow bones, right? And your femurs, making sure that those are going to be way too hard, and my dogs would totally crack their teeth on those.
What I've noticed, and I'm going to give you a little demonstration. Let's say that this is a tooth, okay?
Yeah.
Kind of like a apple tooth. And this is the bone. So if the knuckle bone is strong and they kind of chew around, the surface is not abraded and scaled as the same way as if the tooth goes through the bone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't just do knuckles either.
Okay.
But yeah, it's great for outside. I mean, you've seen Kiara's teeth. They're pearly white at 9. But that's a very good point with making sure that you do, either
variety. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they should not be smoked. They shouldn't be cooked.
No.
They shouldn't be preserved. They shouldn't be sitting in the pet store basket for 6 months, because it's just all saying preservatives, chemicals, not safe, at least from my perspective.
And like carcasses make a great one too, right? You can get duck carcass, you can, or like, the backs, the back pieces that I'm talking about.
Yeah. For small dogs, absolutely. Poultry
Yeah.
bones for small dogs, like a Chihuahua, you won't give them a big bone because it's gonna fall on them and kill them. But hopefully not. But you know what I mean. So chicken bones are good for smaller dogs, but for medium-sized to larger dogs, they're too soft and they're not gonna be very useful. The other thing that I tell people that the canines usually do not get scaled by bone chewing. Most dogs just basically, they chew back here, but they don't chew with the front teeth. So sometimes giving them some tripe or giving them safe silicone toys or made of safe material, even fibers like fabric, linen, or something like that, could actually help to abrade those canine teeth.
Mhm.
But, I usually take a scaler and scale the canine teeth. Sometimes you can just take a nail and scrape it off, or obviously dental brushing, toothbrushing.
Mhm.
Ideally, every dog should be used to ultrasonic toothbrush and just brushing with a little bit of good food or something like that. I don't really like the dental pastes, the dog toothpaste. I just don't really think that they're that great, but dental toothbrushing would be great.
And there are some recipes too that you can make, right, for toothpaste. I think actually Karen might even have one.
Yeah,
Karen
Dr.
Becker.
Becker. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And we could go forever.
Yeah.
We have a chart on healthy bones and
Mhm.
which ones are for play and which ones for dental care. And we can actually show it right here. Why don't we? Here it is.
So let's talk a little bit about socialization.
Don't get me started, but do get me started on socialization because I get super frustrated when dogs and puppies especially don't get socialized, because that's where behavior problems come up or how they come up. And because I have had the opportunity to live in Canada and also Europe, where I'm from, and I love going back to, I see how different socialization is and what the results are. So to start with puppies, we veterinarians have adopted the myth that puppies should not be socializing until they're 4 months of age, until all the boosters are completed. And in my mind, it is not any different as if we said that children are not to socialize until they're 7 or 8 years of age.
Or even
right?
older.
Or even older.
Yeah.
Obviously, in natural setting, I'm going to go back to nature because whenever we are unsure, we should go back to nature and look what nature does. Puppies interact with other dogs while they're protected with maternal antibodies. They interact with other dogs. They start building up their own antibodies. And nature has it figured. It doesn't, canine species would not survive if this didn't work. Socializing puppies with obviously their siblings and the mother and maybe the dogs in the household until they are, from my point of view, 12 weeks of age, right? But handling them, making sure that you have friends coming in and exposing them to noises and the outdoors and all that. And you could probably say more about that. And I'm going to pass the talking stick to you because you, as a dog lover extraordinaire and also a professional breeder, occasional professional breeder. We have puppies once every 2 years
2 years.
so.
Yep. Small scale.
Tell
Yep.
us more. What do you do?
Pretty much everything that you just said, right? Like making sure that if you do have dogs in the household, if you're a breeder, right? Making sure that those dogs can be introduced safely if mom is accepting. I'm very grateful with my hounds that love to live all together. So they get different exposure with different dogs. We are constantly having people come over and handle them differently, right? Because the way that I handle is going to be different than the way that you handle or anybody else. Different smells, different noises, different ages, right? All of that is super important. Also having different things like different objects and textures and feels and noises, if you can't, if you live somewhere super quiet, making sure that you're playing noises on Spotify or YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they get that socialization experience. I also follow puppy culture, and they have things that are called like a puppy party. That is a great time to have all your puppy families over, or have a variety of different friends and families, and just a variety of different exposure, essentially, as much as you can cram in. And then, as you know, like I also kept Huckleberry from my litter, and every single day we go out and we're doing something different.
And so, when I found Pax and decided to adopt him, it was super fun because those puppies were going actually for a little field walk, even at the age of 5 or 6 weeks. And it was so fun to see them with the mother. And again, we should just show you the video of this. Isn't it fun to see them just acting like real dogs in nature and getting exposed? And Pax is one of the most socially adjusted dog. And I'm very grateful to Nella, their original mom, or his original human mom, because she done such an amazing job with this. And she's also an animal health technologist, so she kind of knew the ropes and all that. When I came to pick him up at the age of 8 weeks, the first thing that we did, we actually took a few of the puppies, maybe 2 or 3, and we actually took them to public transit. We actually rode public transit with them. Then we went to pet store and got a harness. Pax is just so well adjusted. And in Prague, I was able to take him to restaurants. So I have this picture of him sitting at the table at 8 weeks. And, it still makes me feel like crying when I actually remember that moment. And I get so happy to see that there are some societies and some cultures that actually know and accept that dogs are not only important part of the society, but that they don't need to be removed from restaurants and public places, and that they should meet each other. And that actually that leads to them being well adjusted and happy, and everyone is happy at the end. And so when I come back to Canada, that is a dog loving place, I see the differences, and I'm going to ask Canadians to forgive me, but I can't not see the differences, how dogs are handled here. First, they don't see other dogs until they're 4 months. They're like the children who've never seen other children until they're 6 or 8, and are socially maladjusted, many of them. They're not allowed to sniff other dogs, to say hi to other dogs. And, it breaks my heart to see dogs being pulled away or jerked on away from other dogs when they want to say hi. I don't think that it's intentional, but it is severely damaging. Plus the restrictions and no dogs in the beaches, no dogs in many parks. They create these dog park ghettos where there's like a high concentration of dogs, and the dogs that are not extroverted get mangled and jumped on and traumatized even more. This is a serious problem. And every time I come back to Canada and Vancouver, to be honest, I actually become a little low and depressed about how bad the situation is. Just the other day, I was walking in the park, and a man had a 1-year-old Bouvier who wanted to say hi to Pax so much. The dog was jerked back. Then he pulled the owner back to the ground. And then I witnessed something that I can't really forget, when the owner actually, or the guardian shook the dog and started yelling, "No, no, no," at him. And at that moment, I kind of go like, I know that I can't do anything else than just say, hey, your dog didn't do it on purpose, or try to defend the dog in a gentle way. But this is happening on a regular basis. And I don't really know how else to change it than talk about these things, and really understand that puppies and dogs need to be socialized to be well adjusted, and not to be crazy when they see another dog, whether they're fearful or aggressive or somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think a huge piece of Canada is we see a lot of dogs who are really reactive, right? And having not enough support, whether it be rescues that are being brought in that are lied about and put into homes who are not prepared to deal with a harder dog. I see a lot of that happening. And that's not fair, right? To the dog, to the people who are expecting and hoping for just like this lovely member of their family. Breeds that are unsuitable for certain people. And also, like, one thing that I really think is dogs need more. We need to be making sure that we are getting them out daily, multiple times a day for a walk, because if you think about it, we are, at work for 8-10 hours a day, and our dogs are just sitting at home. They're waiting, right? And so I know that, sometimes it's exhausting and you just want to chill when you get home, but your dogs need to get out. They need to be run. They need to have time where they can let all that out. That frustration, that energy. They need to be a dog. They need to sniff the world, right? Like, they need to be able to be a dog.
We have to make a t-shirt that will say "Sniff the World." The question arises, is it really the best idea to get a dog when you have 3 young kids and you don't have time for your dog, or when you are working really long hours at work, at the office, and you have to leave your dog behind? There are other ways to make living, right? Like my team and our team, they are with their dogs because they have a long distance job. So that's one of the ways to solve it. The other way to solve it is to actually see whether the employers would actually be open to taking your dog to the office, because sometimes it's possible. And I think that people don't realize how much depressed dogs get. And dog depression is actually another topic that I'd like to talk about a lot, because I think that it's real. Behavior in dogs is also affected by their hormonal health. And I have been a big proponent of hormone-sparing sterilization, because when we neuter our dogs, the latest research says that this causes changes in their brain. And one of the reasons why the changes happen or take place is that when the gonads are missing, the luteinizing hormone that is produced by the pituitary gland elevates from 3 to 90 or even higher, and it starts causing inflammation of different parts of the body. It can be ligaments, it can be thyroid gland, it can be organs, it can be the skin, it can be ears, but also the brain. And so they found these immune complexes with luteinizing hormone and the receptor and luteinizing hormone complexes in the brain, in the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. So we started to see, and I noticed that too, that neuter dogs actually are more likely to be dog aggressive, or they're more likely to be fearful. I have gone as far as putting my dog Pax on hormone replacement therapy, and it wasn't because of his behavior, but he started losing muscle and started getting injured himself because he grew up strong, well muscled, and then he was neutered. He lost the muscle and started to get injured. And we know that the inflamed parts in the body and the inflamed tissue actually attracts more luteinizing hormone that causes more inflammation. So it's a vicious circle. After I put Pax on hormone replacement therapy, the change was profound on all the levels. He's healed from all his injuries. That's number one. But he also has become less obsessive about, let's say, chasing lights and so on, and being really obsessive about certain things as a border collie. He became calm and even more sweet and cuddly and socially adjusted. Like, there would be the odd time where he would be intolerant to other dogs when they would be pushy on him and stuff like that. Now he's totally mush. Like, he just doesn't care. Seeing all this and also knowing that this is confirmed by science tells me that once again, we need to adjust our perception and our ways, because medicine and our knowledge and our knowing evolves, and we just need to go with it. Like, being stuck in the back, being stuck in the past doesn't really help anyone.
To your point, too, there's a lot of people who will neuter their dogs thinking it's going to help with a behavior, right? And I have never seen it.
You will not see it very often. They may not be interested in females, but they will develop other bad habits. And, interestingly enough, you're saying that. I go for dog walks fairly early. And unfortunately, early times and hours are frequented by aggressive dogs. Mm-hmm. I've seen that. And there's this white poodle in the local park that was aggressive when he was unneutered. And so now he's neutered and he's even more aggressive. Like basically, whenever the guardian sees Pax or any other dog, she basically goes way off the trail and starts yelling and screaming that we shouldn't come close and near. The other thing that I think is really kind of important and interesting, I notice that a society that is very polite on the outside and there's a lot of aggression kind of suppressed or anger suppressed, our dogs often act it out for us. Or people have a real fear and they get embarrassed when their dog expresses certain degree of displeasure or whatever it is, right? You know, another dog is too pushy, so they bark at each other or growl at each other, and that's it. And I think that people really react negatively to those situations as opposed to most of the time, I actually, if anything like that happens, I let Pax kind of sort it out and it's fine because I'm confident that he will not go after the other dog. He will just tell them, don't jump in my face or don't jump on me, right? But people react negatively. And at certain point, their reaction actually will amplify the dog's reaction. And I do think that partially it comes from people's inability to express their emotions and suppressing them and being horrified, seeing it in their dogs. Or us as a generation being told that getting angry is not okay, right? No, crying is not okay, whatever is not okay. So then people hold it in and then our dogs express it for us. And we get also embarrassed. So it's just a vicious circle that is very clear, but many people don't understand the core, the substance, the basis of this behavior and what's going on, right? So listening and reading and talking to each other is the way to go.
I would love to get your opinion and have a conversation about when we're out and about walking our dogs. I know you and I both do a lot of off-leash time as well, which is super important, which we can also get into. But having a safe setup for your dog, and why? What do you choose for Pax?
Off-leash versus on-leash. Obviously, our world is written with signs, put your dog on the leash. And we have to leash our dogs by the law in many places or bylaw, which I think is, again, an unfortunate thing because if I am in Prague in the Czech Republic, I can pretty much take my dog off leash anywhere I think he or she is safe. Mm-hmm. And many people have their dogs on leash, but having that freedom of being off leash actually allows them to socialize better. Almost eliminates leash aggression because dogs can say hi and sniff each other. And especially when they're young, they need to do that to be able to socially adjust. In Europe in general, you'll see that dogs are generally much more free and they're better adjusted. So I'm all for just kind of allowing people to be responsible. And that's the other part, that the more restrictions there are, the more people misbehave, right? So then they have their aggressive dogs off leash and they're attacking other dogs and so on. It happens more in the society and the culture where there's more restrictions. So that's one thing that I've noticed. When I go back to the Czech Republic, and it's formerly communist country where there was a lot of enforcement and force, now the police cars have two simple words on the doors, drivers and passenger, and it says help and protect. And this is what I actually would like to see in North America as well, where we help and protect each other, and that the police and the bylaw officers help and protect people from those who really are crossing the line and violating people's boundaries and other dogs' boundaries. That's all fine. But why should everyone be punished for the misbehavior of a few? And we know that it doesn't work anyway. Like, nobody wants to be forced. We want to make our own responsible decisions, and we also have to raise our dogs and our society and children in the spirit of being respectful, being kind and mindful, and but not be forceful, because it only generates more force. And we know that in history, like whether it's around dogs or whether it's between people or nations, like force never leads to anything good. Once again, I said I'm pacifist, and therefore I am for a lot of off-leash time for dogs, and and allowing them to kind of develop the social skills that will lead to more positive times together.
I really agree with, I mean, as you know, right? Like I'm in the forest so much. And I think if you have the ability to get out with your dog and do those types of things off leash, it's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of different smells and sights and even for truly their ability muscle wise, right? Because they're going over logs or going over different roots and
Mm-hmm.
they're able to actually like touch the ground that's not concrete, right? But when we do have to leash, what's your go-to?
Before we get to leashes and collars and harnesses,
Yeah.
I also want to say one thing that I often hear the argument that because some dogs are aggressive, all dogs should be leashed because of the other dogs, right?
Okay.
I just recently saw a sign: leashing your dog is not about your dog's safety; it's about the other dogs and people who are afraid, right?
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
I just don't really understand the premise of all the dogs being restricted while a few have a problem. It's like saying, okay, we lock all the people in the prison or we'll restrict them to travel on aircraft just because some people misbehave. Like that just does not make sense. But we have somehow ended up with a society where there's so much restrictions and everyone lectures each other, while I'm kind of certain that everyone in one way or another breaks the rules here and there, right? I had my friends lecture me on my dog being off leash in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, while they would come to the cabin after the hike and they would smoke pot inside of the cabin,
Really?
which was not allowed, right?
Yeah.
So people have double standards for everything, right? And so I don't want to come across as righteous, but look at let's see dogs in Thailand or Asia. Like they would be navigating the streets and traffic in perfection. Like they know when to stop and look when there is a car coming in. So I'm trying to actually get our maladjusted puppies that have never been off leash, right, to actually navigate the world. Like it's just really hard. So I'm not saying let your dogs run in the street and endanger them, but I'm just saying there has to be the middle road for everything in the world. Like I think that the middle road is the road of the most safety and comfort and adjustment.
And I think there's a couple things that you touched on where, yes, with puppies, I think there's a lot of people that get nervous, right? You've got this young little puppy and he's so precious and you don't want to lose him. You don't want anything to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I have always had my puppies day one were off leash because there's no better time to teach them off leash when they want to be with you. Naturally, they want to hang out close by you. They're not going very far. So you can teach and use that opportunity to your benefit of teaching them off leash appropriate situations, right? But also I do see, especially here, and I guess it's different in Prague entirely. But we do have a lot of reactive dogs here, right? And again, going back to whatever that cause may be, I get that they also need to exercise their dogs for sure. But we need more space that is off leash friendly. And, with a pack of my size, and when I get together with my friends, we have 8-9 dogs just between the two of us. And we have no problem if we are coming up against somebody on, a trail in the middle of nowhere and they have their dog on leash, we automatically just call them over. And I would say 9 out of 10 times, they're like, thank you so much. My dog is very reactive. Well, we have no problem pulling off to the side and letting you guys pass. That's fine. I understand 8-9 dogs is a lot to handle, right? But there's also many times where, we come across dogs that are great and there is no issue. But that's, one of the many reasons why I do love being in the trails, in the mountains, because I find you have a lot more respect there, right? Whereas you in city have people that A, don't understand their dog, or B, are too risky with their dog, right? The amount of times that I've had dogs charge and go to attack Kiara and I'm trying to defend her. And Kiara, like she is the sweetest little thing and like unreal, right? There was a little bit of a derailment for me, but yesterday I was at Rona with Huckleberry, and one of the managers, she said, I have to be totally honest with you. We had a dog that attacked one of our employees the other day, and the guy said, well, you said I could bring my dog in. And, know your dog, right? If that's not a safe situation,
Mhm,
don't bring
mhm.
your dog in there,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? Like they're also going to ruin it for everyone. You're going to make more
Mhm,
restrictions, more
mhm.
rules.
And it doesn't end, right? Like we as
No.
a society need to actually really acknowledge that 40% of people and families have dogs. So why should not we be entitled to the public spaces, to the
Oh yeah.
beaches, to the parks? It would be very easy. And if I will never go to politics, but if I was in politics, whether local or not local, like I would just say, this is the percentage. Let's kind of divide the public spaces in equally, or not equally, but based on the proportions. And the non-dog people who love dogs can actually go to the dog area, and the people who don't like dogs just there's a sign, dog area, right? And so in Vancouver, for example, there's almost no space on the public beaches where dogs can go.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's just sad. It just says how bureaucratic and how unreasonable our society is when it comes to that. Um, I know it may be well intended, but the implications and the results of these restrictions are not really positive. And I'm unwilling to actually subject my dog to some sort of a dog park
No.
where there's like 30 or 40 dogs
Yeah.
running in crazy mode because they have not been out for the whole week, and suddenly they go out in the park and they
Yeah.
misbehave. I'm just unwilling to do that and get my dog injured after him now being well and recovered.
It's so true, though. So going back to harnesses, I believe you're going to talk about thoughts, experiences.
This is actually a mission that I've been on for a long, long time, because I know that no one wants to have anything around their neck, whether it's a dog or whether it's a person. And I usually start with a human, asking them whether they would like to have a collar, unless they are in some sort of kinky game or something play. Nobody wants to have a collar around their neck. And I think our dogs, it just doesn't really make sense from the point of safety, because if you think of the collar, it actually is in an area where there's the thyroid gland right underneath it. And if a dog pulls, the thyroid gland gets injured, then inflamed, and the immune system actually goes and removes the cells that are inflamed. And that's how partially hypothyroidism happens. There are also blood vessels and nerves, the vagal nerve that supplies the lungs and the heart and the gut and the kidneys with nerve fibers, actually originates in the neck. And if it's restricted, you may start seeing bizarre symptoms that many will not diagnose as collar-related injuries. But sometimes when dogs have health issues, the one thing that you need to do is to remove the collar and everything is fine. Another issue that I see in dogs a lot is that they start licking their paws, their pullers, especially large dogs, or little dogs that are on retractable leashes. They start licking their paws because they have neurological sensation due to the injury of the nerves that supply the feed but originate in the neck. So there's a number of reasons, plus muscle spasm again, injuries, and so on. Like when I see people jerking on their leash and the leash is attached to the collar, I cringe, because I know how many possible problems can be generated just by a few pulls and tugs. I still see and hear of many dog trainers who actually suggest that that little pull and tug is okay. Well, we know that chiropractors go to school for 5+ years, and they have to really know and understand how to adjust the neck. But if we have our dogs on the leash attached to a collar, are basically doing chiropractic adjustments without knowing what we are doing, and it can cause a lot of problems. So I have tried for years and decades now to pass on the message that harnesses are much safer. Ideally, there's many different harnesses. We have one harness that we have on our website, which is called Perfect Fit Harness, made in the UK. It's great. And I use it on Pax all the time. I have not had Pax's leash attached to a collar for as long as he's lived. Like, I know what could happen when the collar is attached. But there's another big issue, and that's the retractable leash. Even if you have a harness and you protect your dog's neck, the retractable leash is under certain force. The spring is strong. And when you attach it to either the harness or the collar, even more so the collar, it can actually generate constant pressure on the tissue and so on. And people use the brakes quite often. And, every time I hear clicking, the brake clicking, I once again, I cringe. I have a very kind of almost physical reaction to hearing that because I know how much damage is being caused. And I just can't help it.
Right.
But I really warn people about the effect of the retractable leash. They may give dogs freedom, but they unfortunately affect them in a big way. They exert the force on your dog's neck or body, and they can create injuries. So often these dogs are treated for food allergies, while when you remove the collar or the retractable leash, they stop licking, right? And you do a few adjustments, laser therapy, acupuncture. You basically look after the neck, and the problems disappear.
I think it's a good note too to make sure that, like many things in life, one harness is not a fit all, right? So, making sure that you have a harness that, like the perfect fit or the balance harness, like they are all allowing for your free range of motion.
Absolutely.
Right? You're not having one that's sitting on your shoulders, restricting
or
movement.
rubbing under the armpits
100%.
and all that.
Yeah.
They have to be perfectly fitted.
Yes.
The reason why actually I took years choosing different harnesses. And the reason why I like perfect fit is that it's modular. You can actually have the front piece can be large, the top piece can be medium, and the girth piece can be large again. Like different dogs and shapes and sizes and breeds require this flexibility and adaptability of the design. So you're absolutely right. There is no perfect harness, but there are harnesses that are well designed and are soft and they don't chafe and they don't rub and so on.
Yeah.
I'm also not in favor of the facial harness. I think it's called Halti.
Yeah.
Because it actually puts dog's neck in a natural position.
Or like this.
And there's also a tendency for them to injure their upper cervical area and strain it because there is this unnatural angle. Like dogs actually like to sniff and walk this way.
Yeah.
They don't like to walk this way. So plus it kind of generates this weird impression for others that the dog may be aggressive, right? Because it has something around the face and people react and respond to it. So we will have a separate section and segment on harnesses. So if anyone wants to learn more, wants to learn about harness fitting, about how to choose a harness, and also how to use a leash properly, we will have a separate segment. You can also search on our website and YouTube and find them there. Oh, one more thing. If you use a harness on your dog, make sure that you actually take it off when your dog is off leash because it's always better.
There is a lot of different thoughts and opinions on puppy and exercise, right? We talked a little bit about how making sure you do off leash and off leash starting young to make sure that you're getting those puppies used to different surfaces and textures and, out and about in the world. But how much exercise is too much?
That's a really loaded question because, it not only depends on the age of the dog, but also on the breed of the dog. So, you can definitely overdo exercise in puppies, but you can also underdo it. So whenever unsure, you go back to nature and see what puppies would do. They would play, they would run, they would be around, and then when they're tired, they flop down and they're exhausted and they sleep and then they play again. So I would like to, I usually recommend emulate this kind of environment in real life. So give your dog a choice how much they want to exercise, but do not restrict them from being free and play and even going for strolls and little walks in the forest. Or, I used to take Pax in the forest and I would plop down somewhere leaning on the log and he would play and dig and, having fun, or we would take a friend's dog and we would do that together. And it always worked out well. Now, the transition from this kind of phase to hiking is a little more complicated because some dogs are faster growing at certain points. They're more likely to get injured, like larger dogs are, when they go through that growth spurt between, 2 to 6 or 7 months where they just exponentially expand and grow in front of your eyes. I would be very careful taking them for long hikes. And also, when you have a larger breed, you have to be a little more careful to take them for, let's say, runs or something like that. I would just let them play and go for relatively short walks, a couple of kilometers here and there. But I would not be taking them for 5, 10 kilometers in the period of 2 to 6 or 7 months. Then after that, you just kind of start extending the periods of dog walks and so on. One thing that I would never do, I would never bike with my dog because you can actually take chances that they get exhausted. They don't want to lose you. They get exhausted. They may even fracture their growth plates because the growth plates get traumatized and they virtually peel off from the rest of the bone. And then you have a dog with fracture. In smaller dogs, obviously, they don't go as far, but they grow slower in proportions with their body, and also their growth is finished faster. Larger dogs grow longer. They can grow all the way to 2 years of age. So, I would say that once dog reach puberty, like 7, 8 months, you can take them for reasonably long walks. Just pay attention to whether they're getting tired or not, and make sure that you don't overexert them. I actually, 20 years back, when Sky was growing up, I took him on a relatively big hike when he was not even 6 months. And I must confess that I think that I probably caused some damage to him and to his lumbar area because he was not ready. So I'm not excluded from making mistakes, but what I'm trying to do is to make sure that people don't make mistakes that I made or that other people make.
We learn from each other.
Yeah, we learn from each other. We learn from ourselves. And, I'd go the route of least regret when it comes to exercising. But also the other thing that you can do is to let dogs explore water. Let them obviously play with other dogs. Start teaching them how to balance on different balancing cushions and do a little bit of physio or core building.
Yeah.
And you also call it life enrichment, right?
Yeah, canine enrichment. Absolutely.
Yeah, canine enrichment, life enrichment. What do you do with your pups and with your dogs?
Yeah, for exercise, same thing. For puppies, like very conservative. I let them do as much as they want in a free space, right? So if like we go to the beach, there's usually this one area where I can go for a little walk and then plop down and I can hang out and then they can play as much as they want. Same thing with any kind of field situation. No hikes. We do flat trail walks. And then when they are a little bit older, because I do have a large breed, I am pretty careful until at least about a year, because especially the males, like they're not finished growing until like 18 months, 2 years at least. So I just keep impact, right? Like I think a lot of low impact exercise.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's super important not to let them jump from high up and, just making sure that they don't have high impact exercises, ball throwing or something like that. I think it's good for cardio. But I also think that it can be really dangerous, especially in growing dogs. There can be a lot of slipping and sliding and trauma.
Or that abrupt stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Rough braking, start off. You see that a lot.
Yeah.
So just kind of look back what canines would do in nature. They would stroll, they would hike, they would rest, they would play, they would hunt.
And making sure that you two look at your dog as a whole and like, okay, we've only done, an hour each day, Monday to Friday, but I want to go on a 4-hour hike on Saturday and they've never done that. Like, not a great idea, right? So making sure that you meet your dog where they're at. And like you said, just slowly increasing that time and slowly elevation, etc., depending on where you live. So yeah, that's what I do with my guys.
I closely work with rehabilitation expert, with chiropractor, physical therapist. I love, and my partner loves, laser therapy as well, acupuncture, intramuscular needle stimulation. I think that from the get-go, as soon as your pup starts being in the world, you really need to look after them. You really need to make sure that he detect any imbalances or problems early on. There's also the issue of hormone-sparing sterilization or absence of hormones in dogs and puppies, which leads to injuries. And that's something that I actually would like to address even now for puppies, because it's a big issue. And I'm going to just outline what I wanted to talk about, and then we'll record it in a different video next time. How about that?
That works.
And for those of you who are watching this program, just go to my YouTube channel or my website and look for hormone-sparing sterilization or hormone replacement therapy, and you will find some materials, whether it's articles and videos and so on. So just to kind of give you a description in a nutshell, again, my dog Pax taught me about what happens when dogs are neutered and start getting injured, because he was neutered fairly late at the age of 18 months, and I needed to neuter him because he's a certified service dog for my sleepwalking. I sleepwalk through Glassdoor when I was in my 20s and almost died, and I still do sleepwalk the odd time. So he's trained for that. He had to be neutered. But as a result of him being neutered, about 6 months after he was neutered, he started getting injured. He would heal initially, but then he stopped healing, and he eventually ended up with pretty much limping almost constantly. Obviously we did the regular physio and chiro and rehabilitation, and nothing really worked. But then during my research, I started kind of discovering some research on the topic of the hormone absence in neuter dogs and spay dogs and what it does. Basically, what happens when dogs do not have their gonads, the luteinizing hormone in their pituitary gland elevates because it normally stimulates the gonads to produce testosterone and estrogen and other hormones. But when the gonads are missing, the luteinizing hormone elevates, has nowhere else to go, and the receptors in the body elsewhere connect with the luteinizing hormone and start causing inflammation. And the more inflammation there is, the more receptors there are. So this is all scientifically proven. And so in case of Pax and other neuter dogs, they start displaying different symptoms. They link these conditions to hypothyroidism or cruciate ligament tear, increased rates of lymphoma or osteosarcoma, which is cancer. They start linking it even to behavioral changes because these luteinizing hormone complexes or receptors are in the amygdala and the brain. And so in case of Pax, I started seeing him injured, and he stopped recovering from the injuries. And I have a 4-year-old dog that is acting like an older dog. And I've done everything, the right nutrition, the right supplements, and all the rehab, and still he was not recovering. So for me as a professional, as a vet, it was a really hard thing to see. Obviously, I felt like a failure in what I was doing, and also questioned, like, what am I missing? So this relentless search led me to the researchers and experts, Dr. Michelle Kutzler and Linda Brent, who've done the research. And I since have recorded interviews with them, and you can, again, find them on our channels. But what happened after that was even more mind-blowing. So what I did after very careful deliberation, I decided to put Pax on hormone replacement therapy. The first phase of this treatment was to put Pax on deslorelin, and it's an implant that neutralizes the luteinizing hormone. And some people may think you're always, trying to minimize drugs, and suddenly you put your own dog on deslorelin. Well, it was the best thing I've done because it actually reduced the luteinizing hormone, and pretty much within a day or two, like, I saw the change in his inflammation level and in his behavior. And I separated it from the next phase, which was testosterone, because I wanted to know what happens on just the deslorelin. Deslorelin comes under the name of suprelorin, and the effect of it is just so profound. Within a day or two, Pax was just like a different dog. Like, he was happier. I could see that his inflammation in the injured areas of his body went down. But he also started to lose his hair, and he started being really itchy. And it's one of the side effects. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? So this went on for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then I was able to get to Canada and put him on testosterone. because testosterone is kind of controlled in the United States where I was before. So I put him on testosterone, and the transformation within the past 2 or 3 months has been just incredible. He muscled up. People constantly comment on how good he looks. They think that he's a puppy. He's playful. He's amazing. But the injury recovery took about 2.5 months, and we implemented joint butter, which is my new mobility support that I created for everyone, for dogs that have joint issues and muscle issues and injury. And then we also started to treat him with laser therapy. And I am very grateful to Dr. Laurie McCauley, who is a board-certified fitness and sports medicine specialist for dogs. About 2.5 months into this treatment and into hormone replacement therapy, I have my dog back completely. Like, he's so happy. He's just so full of energy. And that was such an aha moment for me to see how much hormones play a role in dogs' health. How important it is for us to find different ways and do hormone-sparing sterilization, keep the gonads, keep the ovaries, keep the testicles, do vasectomies, remove the uterus, but not remove the hormone-producing gonads. This is so important, and this is why I'm on the mission to actually tell everyone that neutering and spaying dogs the old way is not safe, that there are other methods to prevent dog overpopulation and homelessness, and that we really need to change our ways again. And I know that there are some people who are not that open to it, but I also believe that as time progresses and the research is going to be more widely known, that we are going to see this as the way to go. And we will also wonder why we did it the old way in the past, because it's going to be so self-evident, and it is so self-evident as well. So, Robin, I know that I've gone for quite some time, and I apologize about that, but our dogs come to us to teach us. Our dogs come to us to teach us about what is important. They're such messengers. There's no better way to learn than through love for our dogs. And this is what I've been doing for the last 30 years. And I know that this is what you've been doing as well about your dogs.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important to really reiterate that how important it is where, if you're getting your dog from a breeder, many have contracts now where you can't even consider spaying or neuter until they're 2 years old, which is fantastic. But many also still offer, hey, let's not do a spay or neuter, but let's do a hormone-sparing sterilization, whether it be a vasectomy, ovarian-sparing spay. So yeah, there are options. And then, as you shared, there are still options too, even if you have already gotten your dog and you have spayed or neutered, and especially if you're experiencing any issues. So that's fantastic. I'm so excited to see him next week.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun for you to see him. And it just, it's mind-blowing. Really, honestly, the change is mind-blowing. For those of you who are interested in hormone-sparing sterilization and hormone replacement therapy, or just letting everyone else know, we have been really gathering our forces and our community to educate others and let them know that this research exists. There are many of my colleagues, and there are also researchers who are really at the forefront of this movement. And if you want to, you can go to my website at petertobias.com and look for the pages that are pertaining to this topic. And also, we're raising funds to be able to promote hormone-sparing sterilization and hormone replacement therapy more. So thank you so much for considering to pitch in. And if you want to volunteer, you can also connect with us. And we're looking for volunteers and people who would help us with this effort. It makes me feel like, after 30 years, I'm still so excited about doing this work with you, Robin, and also with my team, with our team, and with everyone, the community.
It's very exciting.
We're in it together, so let's try to do a good job together.
Well, thank you so much for all the information and great tips, and I can't wait until next time.
And thank you so much as well for being here. And I always love to talk to you and hanging out. And I can't wait to see our pups next week as well.
Yeah.
And Huckleberry. I hope that Pax and Huckleberry will get along, but I think that they will. I just have a good feeling about it. We get along well, so
Yeah.
I think that they will.
And if he's too much, Kiara will keep him busy and they can flirt and run faster than he can right now.
Right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.